Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
It wasn't supposed to be a big deal. Just a throwaway line. One of those half-jokes people say at parties to get a laugh. I didn't plan it. I wasn't sitting there rehearsing the punchline or anything. It just slipped out. But the second it landed, dead center in the middle of that casual, boozy Friday vibe, I knew I'd messed up. Man up, Malcolm. God, you're such a buzzkill tonight. It wasn't even the meanest thing I've ever said to him. That's the messed up part. I've rolled my eyes harder. I've sighed louder. Hell, I've called him useless once, maybe twice, during fights over laundry or bills. He never walked out over those. But this time he did. He was standing near the back door, beer in hand, trying to be polite while clearly counting down the seconds until we could leave. That was his thing at parties, hovering, nodding, throwing in a line here or there, but mostly staying quiet while I worked the room. Usually, I didn't mind. I liked being the one people came to for gossip or tequila shots. He was just background. Steady, mild-mannered wallpaper with a decent credit score. But that night, something about his silence annoyed me. The way he wouldn't engage. The way he looked like he didn't even want to be there. I'd spend hours getting ready, coordinating outfits for our daughter so she could spend the night with my sister, picking a bottle of wine I knew Ava liked. I wanted one damn night to feel like we weren't just parents and coworkers and bill payers. One night where we could pretend we were still in our 30s and not already halfway dead inside. Instead, Malcolm stood there like a potted plant. So yeah, I called him out. Loud enough for everyone to hear. Loud enough that Ava's eyes darted toward him, then back to me, then to the floor. Malcolm didn't flinch. Didn't smirk. He just blinked, slowly, and then set his drink down on the counter like it weighed more than he did. And walked out. No scene. No sarcasm. Not even a "we'll talk later." Just turned around and left through the back gate. At first, I laughed. Because what else do you do when your husband bails mid-party and leaves you standing there like you just kicked a puppy? I laughed and said something like, "Guess someone can't take a joke." Nobody laughed back. Ava cleared her throat. "Hey, you okay?" she asked, all soft concern and careful phrasing, like she didn't want to poke the bear. I waved her off, poured another glass of wine, and changed the subject. But I could feel it, the subtle shift in the room. The way people suddenly had somewhere else to be. Even Trevor, who usually lives for drama, started gathering empties like it was time to wrap things up. I stayed another hour, pretending not to care. Pretending he'd be waiting in the car when I finally walked out, ready with a tired sigh and a passive-aggressive joke. But when I stepped onto the porch and saw the empty driveway, something turned in my stomach. He'd actually left. I called him once. Straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. What was I going to say? Sorry for making fun of you in front of people we've known for a decade? That didn't even sound real in my head. I told myself he just needed air. A night to cool off. I've known Malcolm since I was 22. I've seen him mad before, when the insurance company denied our roof claim, when I maxed out the emergency card on a spa weekend I forgot to tell him about, but never like this. Malcolm doesn't slam doors. He doesn't scream or sulk. He recedes. That's his way. He gets quiet in this eerie, methodical way like he's filing away mental paperwork you'll never get to see. The kind of quiet that always used to make me nervous in college, the kind that said he was done trying to explain what he needed. But still, I figured he'd be back by morning. When I got home, the house was too clean. His shoes were still by the door. His hoodie draped over the couch arm like he'd be back in an hour to wear it again. I left the porch light on. Slept badly. Woke up to sunlight pouring through the curtains and his side of the bed still untouched. Harper asked where Daddy went when I handed her cereal. Just out, I said, avoiding her eyes. He had to take care of something. She didn't ask more. She's 7. She's used to him disappearing for grocery runs or work emergencies or solo errands when I'm overwhelmed. I didn't think about what it meant that she didn't seem surprised. That maybe she was already learning that silence is a normal part of love. I checked my phone again. Still nothing. I texted him once, Hey, can you at least tell me where you went? Read. No reply. That whole weekend was a blur of overthinking and underreacting. I told myself it was just a moment. That he was punishing me a little, sure, but that it was deserved and temporary. That he'd come home and we'd talk, and I'd roll my eyes and call him dramatic, and he'd say something passive like, let's just move on. But he didn't come home, and by Sunday night, something in me finally cracked. Not panic. Not yet. But a sliver of something quieter. Something that felt suspiciously like fear. Because the Malcolm I knew, the Malcolm who did the grocery runs and fixed the gutters and carried Harper in from the car when she fell asleep, he didn't do drama. He didn't do games. If he wasn't talking to me, he might really be done. And I didn't know what to do with that. The next few days were a blur of excuses. To Harper, to myself, to anyone who dared ask where Malcolm was. Work thing, I said to my sister when she called. He's just decompressing. She didn't buy it. I could hear it in the pause on the other end. You guys okay? She asked, and I hated how gently she said it. Like I was a cracked face she didn't want to touch too hard. Of course, I snapped. It was a stupid comment. He'll get over it. But by Tuesday night, he still hadn't come home. And my voice didn't sound so confident anymore. The silence was starting to get under my skin. Not just the silence from him, but the silence of our house. No keys jingling at 6:12 p.m. No sigh as he took off his shoes. No soft curse when he dropped his phone on the tile. Just the low hum of the fridge and Harper's cartoon voices, looping in the background like a mockery of normal life. That night, I folded laundry I hadn't touched in a week. One of his t-shirts ended up in the basket, gray, soft, still smelling faintly of his cologne. I pressed it to my face before I could stop myself. Then I got mad. Why was I sitting here sulking? I was the one holding things together. The bills, the homework, the insurance paperwork, me. The reason Harper's recital dress was altered on time? Me. The reason there's food in the fridge? Me. Meanwhile, Malcolm disappears because I bruised his ego at a party? He should be the one texting. Apologizing. Explaining why he bailed instead of acting like some wounded martyr. I picked up my phone to tell him exactly that, thumb hovering over the keyboard, but stopped cold when I saw Harper's drawing on the fridge. It was the three of us. Stick figures with matching smiles. Her in the middle, holding both our hands. For a moment, all the righteous anger drained out of me, replaced with something colder. The next day, Ava called. You free Friday? Girls' night. I almost said yes. I almost said I needed it, some wine, some validation, maybe a little male attention to remind me I still had it. But the truth was, I didn't want to be around anyone who might see through me. I've got Harper, I lied. Next time. I spent Friday cleaning instead. I vacuumed the whole house, rearranged the throw pillows, even scrubbed the baseboards in the hallway. That's how I knew I was spiraling when I started caring about baseboards. I hadn't deep cleaned anything since last spring, and even then, it was Malcolm doing most of it while I pretended not to notice. And that's when it started hitting me. All the things I hadn't noticed. How he used to wake up early to empty the dishwasher before work. How he'd take Harper on errands just to give me space. How he'd sit through my Sunday rants about coworkers he couldn't name, just nodding patiently while I vented. And how little I returned the favor. When I lost my job 2 years ago, Malcolm didn't flinch. He picked up extra freelance hours, made spreadsheets for our budget, and never once threw it in my face. When I forgot to pay the water bill, he fixed it. When I crashed my car backing out of the driveway, twice, he handled the insurance. I used to joke that he was my safety net, but maybe he was the whole damn trapeze, and I never bothered to learn to balance. On Saturday, Harper had her soccer game. Malcolm always went to those. Always. Even when he was swamped. Even when it was pouring rain. Even when I said I could handle it alone. I looked up from the bleachers and scanned the field. No Malcolm. No quiet wave from across the lot. No thermos of black coffee in his hand. No patient nod as Harper waved at him from the goal line. I texted him again. She scored. You missed it. No reply. That was the moment the panic stopped being theoretical. That's when it hit bone. He was making a point. Not just punishing me. Not sulking. Not waiting for an apology. He was done. And for the first time since he walked out, I didn't know what to say. He finally texted me on Sunday night. After 6 full days of silence. Just a single sentence. Can we meet tomorrow? Somewhere neutral. I stared at the message so long my phone dimmed twice. No emoji. No punctuation. No softness. Just business. We met at a diner near his office. The kind with cracked leather booths and too many menu options. I got there early, half hoping he'd cancel. Half hoping he'd walk in, pull me into his arms, and say this whole thing was stupid and he just needed space. Instead, he sat across from me like I was a coworker. Hands folded. Face unreadable. The waitress came, but neither of us looked at her. I ordered coffee. He didn't order anything at all. So I said, trying to smile, "You're alive." He didn't return it. Just looked at me and said, "I've been thinking." Great. Nothing good ever starts that way. About what? I asked, already bracing. He sighed. Not annoyed, more like exhausted. About us. About everything that's been building. That night at Ava's wasn't the reason I left. It was the last confirmation that I needed to. I blinked. Wait, what? You needed to. He nodded slowly. Aaron, I'm tired. I'm tired of feeling like a placeholder in my own marriage. Like I'm just here to cover for your mistakes and carry your moods. That caught me off guard. I sat up straighter, suddenly defensive. That's not fair. You know I've been stressed. The job, Harper, money. I know, he interrupted calmly. And I've tried to support you through all of that. But when was the last time you asked how I was doing? Not just in passing, but really asked. I opened my mouth, closed it again. He leaned in slightly, eyes still too damn calm. You treat me like a backup generator. I keep the lights on while you blow circuits, and the second things are working again, I fade into the background. That's not true, I said, but even to my ears it sounded weak. Isn't it? He said. Every time you overdraw the account, I cover it. Every time you forget something, I remember it. Every time you lash out, I absorb it. But God forbid I have a bad day or need a minute. Then I'm moody. Or sensitive. Or a buzzkill. He paused, then added, You made me the butt of a joke in front of people I've known since college. People who've watched me work overtime and skip weekends to make sure we didn't drown in debt. You embarrassed me for laughs. I shook my head, eyes burning. Malcolm, I didn't mean it like that. I was frustrated. You were acting like a zombie all night. Because I was spent, he said. I'd worked 10 days straight. I was running on fumes. And you didn't even notice. You just wanted me to perform for our friends. That landed hard. I never asked you to be perfect, I said quietly. No, he said. But you punish me every time I'm not. The waitress brought the coffee. Neither of us touched it. I looked at his face, tired, pale, drawn, and realized I didn't recognize the expression he was wearing. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even sadness. It was surrender. I can't keep doing this, he said finally. I feel like I'm disappearing. Like every time I speak up, you talk over me. And every time I let it go, it just reinforces how little I matter. Of course you matter, I whispered. He shook his head. You say that. But your actions don't match. You don't listen. You don't ask. You don't see me, Aaron. I sat there frozen because deep down, I knew he wasn't wrong. He stood up, slid a 20 onto the table even though he didn't order anything. I'm not saying I don't love you, he said. But I'm not going to keep bleeding quietly just to keep the peace. I watched him walk out of the diner without looking back. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't a fight. It was a goodbye. After he walked out of that diner, I didn't move for a solid 5 minutes. The waitress came by twice to ask if I was okay. I nodded both times like my body was on autopilot, but inside, something was fracturing. Something I'd always assumed was unbreakable. I didn't cry. Not then. I was too angry. Not at him, at first. At myself, for not being better in the moment. For not having the right words. For letting him control the conversation. For sitting there like a teenager in the principal's office while he told me everything I'd done wrong. I replayed it all on the drive home. His voice, his face, that part where he said I'd made him feel like a placeholder. Placeholder. The word kept bouncing around my skull like a marble in a tin can. It wasn't the kind of insult you recover from with flowers and a movie night. And yet, part of me still believed this would pass. That this was just his version of a tantrum. That I'd text him something heartfelt and well-phrased, and he'd soften. Because that's what he always did. Malcolm bent. That was his role. Right? I drafted half a dozen messages that night. Deleted them all. I didn't know how to write the kind of apology that didn't sound like a PR statement. I didn't know how to say sorry without spinning it to make myself the victim. Every version of the message had "but" in it. I'm sorry, but you were distant. I didn't mean it, but you embarrassed me first. Like I still couldn't just take the hit. The next morning, I dropped Harper at school and sat in the parking lot for almost an hour. Watching other parents come and go. Watching dads, some scruffy and exhausted, some overenthusiastic, carry lunchboxes and backpacks. I realized I didn't know if Malcolm even wanted to be one of those dads anymore. Not with me, anyway. I called my sister around noon. Told her the truth this time. He's gone. Not officially, but emotionally. She was quiet for a beat. Then, what happened? I pushed him too far, I said, voice hoarse. I treated him like a doormat and called it love. She didn't rush to reassure me. Didn't say he'd come back or that I was being too hard on myself. Just let the silence hang, like she knew I needed it. That night, I opened a bottle of wine alone. No TV. No music. Just me and the quiet, and God, was it loud. I thought about every time Malcolm had cleaned up after me. Every overdraft. Every missed parent-teacher meeting he covered for. Every time I called him boring in front of our friends, like it was a badge of honor that I was the fun one. I thought about the way he used to look at me before we had Harper. When we still tried. When I still tried. That gaze I used to complain about, the one that felt too intense, too focused. I used to call it clingy. Now I'd kill for 1 second of it. I sat there on the kitchen floor, knees pulled to my chest, staring at the empty space where he used to hang his keys. I cried harder than I had in years. Not the dainty, controlled kind of crying you see in movies, full-on, snotty, heaving sobs that left my chest aching. Because I knew. Even if he did come back, even if by some miracle he forgave me, things would never be the same. I'd chipped something too deep to polish out. And the worst part? I couldn't even say I didn't see it coming. He agreed to see me one more time. I didn't think he would. After 2 weeks of nothing but brief texts about Harper, Bear, clinical check-ins that made co-parenting sound like an HR obligation, I figured he was done. And maybe he was. But when I asked if we could meet in person, he replied 3 hours later with a single line. Fine. But no guilt, Aaron. I'm not doing that anymore. It was the anymore that got me. Like he'd already gone through every stage of grief while I was still waiting for the denial to wear off. We met at the park by the library. The one with the crooked bench and the iron statue of a boy reading that Harper used to sit next to for pictures. I got there early, half hoping he wouldn't show. Half dreading that he would. He arrived right on time, as always. He was wearing the same navy hoodie he used to toss on after work, the one with the fraying sleeves and little flecks of paint from when we tried to redecorate the guest room. I almost made a joke about it. Almost. He didn't smile, just nodded and sat down, leaving exactly a cushion's width between us. Thanks for coming, I said, instantly regretting how formal I sounded. He shrugged. What do you need? Not, how are you? Not, I've missed you. Just, what do you need? I licked my lips, suddenly unsure. I'd rehearsed this in my head 100 times, but nothing I practiced felt usable now. I needed to say some things. Not to fix anything. Just, So you'd know I finally get it. He gave the faintest nod, so I continued. I took you for granted, Malcolm. For years. I treated you like backup. Like I could lean on you whenever, and you'd never need to lean back. And when you didn't perform the way I wanted, when you didn't play along at parties or smile for the pictures or say the exact right thing at the exact right time, I made you feel like a failure. His jaw tensed, but he didn't interrupt. I've replayed that night at Ava's so many times it's starting to feel like a movie I hate, but can't stop watching. The way I said it. The way I didn't even look at you after. I thought I was being funny. Or clever. Or relatable. But all I was doing was stripping you down in front of people who already knew how much you give. Who've seen you carry the weight of two people and call it love. Still nothing. Just the steady stare of someone who's learned not to flinch anymore. I want to tell you I'm sorry. But I know that word means nothing without change. And I know I should have said all this when it mattered. Malcolm finally shifted. Leaned forward slightly, elbows on knees, looking down at the gravel path like it was safer than meeting my eyes. I used to wait for this, he said. For you to see me. To say these things. I used to lie in bed next to you, wondering if I'd ever matter the way you mattered to me. I'd tell myself to be patient. That you were stressed or tired or overwhelmed. And maybe you were. But I was too. He looked up then. Calm. Detached. That terrifying kind of detachment that tells you someone isn't mad, they're just done bleeding. You never asked how I was doing, he said. Not really. Not unless it served a purpose. Not unless you needed to compare it to something harder you were going through. I tried, Aaron. God, I tried. I let the digs slide. I covered the bills you forgot. I cooked when you said you were too tired. I sat through dinners where you made jokes about how boring I was. I swallowed so much of myself just to keep the peace. I didn't say anything. What could I say? I left because I realized I was holding up a life you didn't even want, he continued. You didn't want me. You wanted a guy who could prop up your image, your comfort, your story. But you didn't want to share the weight. I did, I whispered, more reflex than conviction. No, he said, soft but firm. You wanted to be admired, not partnered. And I wanted to be seen. Silence hung heavy between us. I wanted to reach for him. I wanted to say I'd go to therapy, change my habits, rebuild brick by brick. But something told me he didn't want promises. So I said the only thing I hadn't rehearsed. I thought you'd never leave. That broke something in his eyes. Not enough to change his mind, but enough to let me see the hurt still living there. That was the problem, he said. You were so sure I'd stay, you stopped asking what it cost me. He stood then, slowly, like he didn't want to make a scene. He looked down at me one last time. I'm not angry anymore, he said. That's how I know I'm done. Then he turned and walked away. No final hug. Just the soft crunch of gravel under his shoes, fading with every step. And me, still on that bench, hands frozen in my lap, finally understanding that love isn't unconditional if respect dies along the way. Malcolm didn't just leave me. He untangled himself. Carefully, cleanly, like someone slipping out of a burning building without making a sound. It's been 6 weeks. Long enough for people to stop asking how I'm holding up. Long enough for Harper to stop asking when Daddy's coming home in that hopeful, sing-song voice. Long enough for the absence to settle into something solid and cold. At first, I tried to distract myself. I filled the calendar with coffee catch-ups and house projects I never cared about before. Repainted the kitchen. Bought new throw pillows. Rearranged the bedroom like a fresh start could overwrite the hollowness on his side of the bed. But it didn't. Nothing did. I miss him everywhere. Not in the big, obvious ways, though I do miss those too. I miss his hand on the small of my back when we cross streets. The way he'd always check if my car had enough gas, even after I rolled my eyes and said I'd do it later. His quiet presence on the couch next to me, both of us lost in separate books, but somehow still connected. But what guts me the most are the tiny, invisible things. I didn't realize how much he protected me from. Emotionally, financially, even socially. He was the reason our bills got paid on time. The reason Harper's lunches were packed. The reason my messes never became catastrophes. He was the net I never acknowledged, always assumed would be there. Now, when things go wrong, there's no backup plan. No one stepping in with a calm voice and a spreadsheet. Just me, panicking in a Home Depot aisle, trying to remember how water shut-off valves work because the sink is leaking and I can't afford a plumber. Harper notices the change, even if she can't name it. She's quieter now. Clingier. I've caught her setting the table with 3 plates, then pretending she forgot and putting one back. She doesn't ask about Malcolm anymore. I think she's afraid of the answer. And me? I'm in therapy now. Weekly. My therapist is kind but doesn't let me hide behind sarcasm. She calls me out when I try to rewrite history. When I say things like, "We just drifted," she asks, or "Did you stop investing in him because you thought he'd never leave?" Turns out I needed that kind of mirror. I've started apologizing without qualifiers. I sent Malcolm a real one last week. Just a letter. No but no bargaining. Just, "I'm sorry I treated you like a guarantee. I see now how much that cost you." He didn't respond. And honestly, I didn't expect him to. He's living in a small apartment now. I know because Harper mentioned he let her pick the shower curtain. She said it like it was a big deal. And maybe it is. Maybe being invited to contribute to matter is more than I ever gave him. I don't know if he's dating someone. I try not to spiral about it. If he is, I hope she listens when he speaks. I hope she doesn't turn his quiet into absence or his calm into weakness. I hope she sees him before he has to disappear. As for me, I'm still figuring it out. Still learning to be accountable without self-hatred. Still unlearning the reflex to deflect and dismiss. Still working on becoming the kind of woman who could have deserved him, if only I'd started sooner. Here's the part no one tells you. Sometimes you lose good people not because they stopped loving you, but because they finally started loving themselves. And when that happens, you don't get closure. You just get consequences.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.